All right, welcome back to the Dr. Jimbo Love Show featuring Patrick the Picker. Unfortunately, Patrick is not with us today. He is down on spring break with his family in Albuquerque, enjoying St. Patrick's Day and a big party they're having at his folks' place. I guess they said somewhere between 30 and 35 pounds of corned beef, lots of beer, and lots of Irish people to enjoy. So I hope Patrick's having a great time down there. We'll see him next week. We're going to be doing a big show, especially the fact that we'll be through the Sweet 16 and into the Elite 8 for the NCAA tournament. So that should be interesting. We are broadcasting live here from Brothers Bar and Grill at the Shops of Northfield. If you're in the Denver metro area and you want to come over and watch the show, feel free to come up to the mezzanine section here at Brothers Bar and Grill. Shops of Northfield are located just north of I-70, right over by Bass Pro Shops or Harkin Theater. So we have 40 beers on tap, a lot of local beers, and probably close to 63 working TVs, including the ones outside, which on a day like today, if you wanted to walk outside and just watch some of the games that are going on today. I know the Nuggets are just getting ready to tip off, and we have a game going on right now, which is Furman versus San Diego State, the first one of the slate for the NCAA March Madness. But yeah, outside you can go out and all of the TVs are special. They have a shield on them that allow you to be able to watch them in the increased light of being outside. So it's pretty cool. All right. Well, last week I want to apologize for not being on. We had a sort of a family emergency. My son Tate was really sick. They thought it was strep throat and an ear infection. What it ended up actually being was basically he had a yeast infection in his throat that spread into his mouth and really clogged up his esophagus so that he wasn't taking any food or any water. We took him into Children's Hospital, by the way. The staff at Children's Hospital here in Aurora is just outstanding. The doctors were able to give him 5 IVs over the next 4 days that we were there and get the medicine in his throat. It started treating the infection, and he started eating on his 3rd day. We took him home on the 4th day. So unfortunately, Yvonne and I both got sick while we were there in the hospital. I tested positive for COVID. It was my first bout with COVID, so I had the fever, the sore throat, really bad runny nose. It was like a bad cold slash flu, and that pretty much knocked me out until Wednesday. And so that was just a rough week, a rough time. Patrick was busy with flying all over the place, so we're back. Next week we'll have Patrick involved here. I was going to have my co-worker Matt Johnson come on today. Unfortunately, it just didn't work out with the way the week shaped up, and we'll have him in. He's the Gonzaga insider that I always mention. He's a very happy man after watching Gonzaga win pretty easily against Grand Canyon yesterday here in Denver. Today's show, instead of going in and talking about the NCAA March Madness, we will talk a little bit about that. We're going to focus more on the hockey, college hockey, because you can't get college hockey and any coverage of college hockey, especially nowadays with all the basketball coverage. So we're going to cover some of the stuff and just kind of go through and get you an idea of what's going to happen, because tomorrow, March 19th, is Selection Sunday for the 16 member tournament that makes up the final Frozen Four. And the Frozen Four, of course, this year is going to be held down in Tampa Bay. So if you're in the Tampa area, definitely check it out. That will be within 2 weeks. They've got a next week tournament to narrow it down, and then there'll be the final Frozen Four teams in Tampa. Also, too, I'm going to talk a little bit for our women's portion today about Becky Hammon. I know we talk about her quite a bit, but she was in town and she gave a really nice, inspirational, motivational speech to a lot of younger people It's just incredible to listen to really what she has to say. She's the real deal, folks. She's a small town girl out of a small town in South Dakota, and she went to CSU. Wasn't really recruited that heavily, ended up doing extremely well, and of course you know that she ended up going on and playing in the WNBA on 2 Olympic teams, then coached at San Antonio Spurs under Greg Popovich, and has done extremely well for herself. We'll talk a little bit about that, and I'll give some quotes from an article that appeared in the Denver Post. Let's start off though, let's go into our hockey coverage. And as you can see, I got a different cover. I'm driving the yellow car today, Lambo, as close as I'm ever going to get to owning a Lambo, at least 2 Lambos. Pairwise, you know, things didn't change a whole lot, but we just have a couple teams we want to feature. First, of course, is Minnesota. Number 2 is Quinnipiac. Number 3 is Denver. Just a little spoiler alert, Denver had some problems yesterday with Colorado College, ended up losing in overtime 1-0. Or actually not in overtime, it was in the regular season. They scored in the second period. Number 4, Michigan. Number 5, Boston University. Number 6, Harvard. Harvard had a big win yesterday against Cornell, ended up beating them, and so they will go on and face the winner of Quinnipiac and Colgate, which will, spoiler alert, Colgate ended up beating Quinnipiac, so you have Harvard facing Quinnipiac in the ECAC Championship. We'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit, in just a moment. St. Cloud State, still alive in the NCHC. They will be facing CC today in the finals. They are number 7. Penn State 8, Ohio State 8 as well. Western Michigan 10. Remember, Western Michigan took a beating from DU 2 weeks ago and then lost in the NCHC. Minnesota State Mankato is number 12, and they're playing in their championship today, which we'll talk about as well. Cornell is at 14, Alaska is at 14, Michigan State 16, Notre Dame. And again, we're going to look really closely at Michigan State, Notre Dame, Alaska, Cornell, and Merrimack, because depending on what happens today with some of these championship games and the automatic bid, which is the 6 conferences that get automatic bids, some of these teams may be left out of the Frozen Four tournament. So we were going to pay very, very close attention. Northeastern also is a team that might sneak in at 18. North Dakota is also at 18. Nebraska, Omaha 20, UConn 20, RIT 22. Remember RIT, they ended up losing in their tournament, but they won the regular season. Will it be enough for them to get into the tournament? I don't know. Minnesota Duluth is 22 as well. Providence is 24. Boston College 25. Let's look down a little bit. Number 28, Colgate. Remember that. They're playing in the ECAC Championship. If Colgate beats Quinnipiac today, the number 28, Colgate, will get into the top 16, and that will knock one of those other teams that we were just talking about, Cornell and Notre Dame or Michigan State or Merrimack, out of the conference or the tournament altogether. Colorado College, again playing for a championship, they're 31st in pairwise. Again, if they win, they're in, and somebody's going to, you know, in the mid-teens section there, like Cornell, could get knocked out. Anything else? I don't see any other teams that are still alive. Canisius is 43. And then Vermont, of course, is 47. We follow up with Dartmouth and Lindenwood, which finish at 60 in our pairwise poll. Let's go into each individual conference, these major 6 conference, and talk a little bit about how it turned out during the regular season and then who's left now in their championship game. Let's start with the Atlantic Hockey Division Conference. And the regular season RIT wins and has played quite well. Remember, RIT is 22 in pairwise. They were 18-7-1. They ended up with 57 points total for the year. Not a bad season for RIT, but they are not in the championship game. Holy Cross versus Canisius. Now, where was Canisius? Canisius was way down, okay, 43 in pairwise. So be aware that, you know, Canisius could end up pulling it out and end up going into the Frozen Four tournament, which would be really interesting. Or Holy Cross. Both of them are way, way down. So Canisius finished 4th overall in the conference, and Holy Cross finished 6th. So you just never know in these different tournaments who's going to win and how it's going to affect the overall. Let's move on to the Big Ten. The regular season champion, of course, was Minnesota. They've been #1 pretty much almost all season long. They are 19-4-1 with 57 points for the year. The championship game is Minnesota versus Michigan, and that will be played today, so we'll be watching. I think both teams would be in no matter what, but so that really won't affect our last 4 in. Minnesota, the way the Big Ten finished the regular season: Minnesota, Michigan, Ohio State, Notre Dame 4th, Penn State 5th, Michigan State, and Wisconsin. Interesting that Notre Dame is still hanging around at number 17 pairwise. Let's see if they've done enough to get in. Next conference is the CCHA. Regular season champion was Minnesota State Mankato. They were 16-9-1, 52 overall points. The championship game today is Northern Michigan versus Minnesota State Mankato. Excuse me 1 second. I'm still struggling a little bit with the COVID, so I apologize. CCHA, Minnesota State Mankato won the regular season. Michigan Tech was 2nd, Bowling Green 3rd, Bemidji State 4th, Northern Michigan, Ferris State, St. Thomas, and Lake Superior round out that conference. So we'll be watching close, see if Northern Michigan can pull off the upset, and they will end up getting in, because remember, the winner of these conference championships get automatic bids. All right, let's move down to the ECAC. And regular season wise, Quinnipiac won. They were 20-2 with 60 points for the overall standings in the regular season. The championship game, again, is kind of interesting. It's Colgate, who upset Quinnipiac, versus Harvard. It should be pretty interesting. If Colgate wins, they're in. So Colgate loses a really tough one, 1-0 in overtime to Harvard yesterday, and goes back to Ithaca. We'll be featuring a little bit of that game. All right, let's move on to Hockey East. And in the Hockey East, the regular season champion was Boston University. They were 18-6, no ties, and 54 overall points. The championship game is Merrimack versus BU. Now, we've mentioned Merrimack back and forth. They're right around 22 right now in the pairwise poll, but they've been in the top 10. So that could be a pretty good game. BU's been tough. They've been in the top 10 all year long. BU would be definitely favored. But again, like we said, you never know what's going to happen with these college kids. And these conference championships are intense, and they can go either way. Lastly, let's talk about our DU hometown conference, the NCHC. And of course, Denver won the regular season. They were 19-5-0. They had 56 total points. But unfortunately, DU lost to CC yesterday, Colorado College. And St. Cloud State won a real tough victory against Duluth last week. They had to go to 3 games in order to win. They won last night, and they are now in the finals, and they will be playing Colorado College. And their outstanding goalie, Mbirika, who is a freshman, I talked a little bit about this gentleman 2 weeks ago when they faced DU in the big game that they had here in Magnus Arena. He's a freshman. He's 5'11", very aggressive, very, very fast. Meets the skaters at the top of the crease and is just really, really tough. A great goalie. Just shut out DU yesterday night, and we'll talk a little bit about that game in just a moment. So that kind of gives you an idea of the top 6 and where we're headed for tomorrow's selection Sunday. Again, we'll wait and see what happens with the teams that are on the bubble. You know, again, let's mention some of those teams that are on the bubble, and I'll just kind of go through here, and really anything from 12 through basically 18 are on the bubble. So you've got Minnesota State Mankato, which probably will get in because they're going to win their conference championship. Plus, they already won the regular season championship in their conference. Now, I was a little bit mistaken. Merrimack has jumped. They are at 13. So that wouldn't be such a stretch if they ended up getting in. Cornell is 14. Alaska is 14. No one's talking about Alaska because Alaska is, of course, an independent. They're not in a conference. So they're kind of out there floating around. Michigan State is in the Big Ten, of course. They are 16. Notre Dame is Big Ten, 17. Northeastern and North Dakota are 18 apiece. So those are your bubble teams. And we'll be watching closely tomorrow to see which of those teams get in. Probably only 2, maybe 3 of them will get in the tournament. Okay, so let's talk basically about Cornell and Harvard's game and break it down a little bit so you can kind of see what happened. The game again was 1-0 Harvard. The goal was scored with 4:28 left in overtime. So it almost, got down to the nitty-gritty. It would have gone to a second overtime. The goal was scored by Alex LaFeria of Harvard. Ian Shane did a nice job at goal for Cornell. He had 24 saves out of 25 shots. Harvard's goalie, Mitchell Gibson, had 15 saves. Interestingly, this game was skated very, very cleanly. There were only 2 penalties the entire game, including the overtime. One going against Cornell and one going against Harvard. So the game started out, basically Harvard came out with 5 shots on goal in the first period. Cornell only had 2 shots. The second period, you've got 6 shots for Cornell, 5 shots for Harvard. So you didn't see a whole lot of shots on goal. These guys were playing pretty good defense and keeping the ball away from the crease, or keeping the puck away from the crease. We get into the third period and you have a little bit more shots. Harvard has 10 shots on goals. Harvard has 7, and which then, of course, it wasn't settled, so it went into an overtime period. Again, the goal was scored at around 4:28 left in the overtime period. Harvard had 5 shots on goal. Cornell was not even able to get a single shot on goal, so Harvard's defense must have clamped down quite a bit. Our final score again was 1-0 Harvard. Wow, this double milk stout that I'm drinking, and I don't know if I mentioned it, but it's out of a brewery up in Longmont. It's called Left Hand Brewery. It's a double milk stout. What does it taste like? It's got a lighter taste, kind of a lighter finish, like a Guinness, but it's got this milky, kind of chocolatey coffee taste to it. And it's just outstanding. So if you get a chance to go in and see Left Hand's double milk stout, pick it up and try some, or come on down to Brothers and have a beer with us. All right, let's move on to Colorado College playing against Denver, University of Denver, DU as we call them here. The Pios ended up losing 1-0. The Pios have beat CC pretty easily the last 2 times they played. It's tough. I'm telling you, folks, it's tough to beat a team in your division, especially a rival like CC is just 60 miles south of Denver. It's hard to beat them 3 times in a row. in a season. And Colorado College came out and just played extremely well. There were 6 penalties in the game, 4 against CC, 2 against DU. And let's see how it broke down. The goal was scored in the second period with 13:22 left. Hunter McCown scored it for Colorado College. Goalies, as far as goalies go, of course, DU has Magnus Corona, who's just been a great goalie. He won a national championship with Denver last year. He was tending goal for 49 minutes. They pulled him out with 9 minutes and 28 seconds left in the third period and put in Matt Davis, who is really the heir apparent for Corona. I don't see Corona coming back next year, so Matt Davis is going to be in the crease for Colorado, for University of Denver. I can't speak enough about Umberco for CC. Ends up having a shutout against a team that's got probably one of the best power plays in college hockey with DU. He went 60 minutes, he had 23 saves. The game pretty much breaks down like this. There was 0-0 in the first period, 12 shots by CC on goal. So they came out and were very aggressive. DU only had 5 shots on goal. The goal was scored by CC again in the second period with 13:22 left. Colorado, no goals in the second period. 8 shots on goal. CC 3 shots on goal. We get into the third period and it was a flurry of action. No goals were scored, but 11 shots on goal by CC. And 10 shots on goal by DU. The overall shots on goal, 26 shots for CC, 23 for DU, and we have a 1-0 win for Colorado College. Probably one of the biggest wins for Colorado College. It's a rebuilding year for them. Folks, look for them to be really building on this momentum, and next year it's going to be tough. They're not going to be an easy team to beat. So, you know, we don't know how DU is going to be or how everybody else in the NCHC will be, but CC Cup. Put them on your schedule, put them on your calendar, watch for them. I know I'll be going down and watching a couple games down in Colorado Springs to watch this team play. All right, so what a weekend, folks. As far as sports goes, you cannot beat it. We've had 32 games in the books already for the NCAA March Madness. There's 64 teams. That means that there's 63 total games. If you count the play-in games, you're at 67 total games. Excuse me. So, if you think about it, 32 games have been played. Almost half the games have already been played in the first 2 games, the first 2 days. That's why Thursday and Friday are so special, and it's such a wild time to be sitting there. And if you're working from home like I was, you have the games going on in the background, and you're trying to do your work, you're looking up, but you're listening the entire day, and you're switching back and forth between 4 games, especially when it gets close. And so Thursday and Friday were great work days and a lot of fun. Of course, everyone's talking about the big upsets. You know, you got Fairleigh Dickinson out of New Jersey. I mean, New Jersey did better on Thursday and Friday, probably the best that New Jersey as a state has done since The Sopranos opening broadcast. You had Fairleigh Dickinson, who's from New Jersey, who won. They beat #1 Purdue. Everybody knows about that, a 1-6. It's only the second time it ever happened. The last time it happened, it was UMBC versus UVA, which is University of Virginia. They were also involved in a loss here. That game was in 2018. UMBC, which is a team that's out of basically Baltimore, won 74-54. The other game that happened on Thursday that was big was #2 Princeton, or actually #2 Arizona, loses to #15 Princeton. And Princeton, of course, is in New Jersey. So New Jersey is just loving it. They're happy. They're celebrating. And so, you know, like I said, it hasn't been since The Sopranos that people have been so excited in New Jersey. There's definitely a reason why they have We Are the Garden State on their their license plate, and mainly because industrial, chemical, and petro waste didn't fit on the license plate. So kind of botched that joke. All right, so what do we got going on today? So today is an interesting day because we've got 8 games, and they're spread out so you don't have to miss any single game. The first game starts at 10:10. It's already underway. Number 13 Furman will be playing number 5, or they are playing number 5 San Diego State. At 12:40, you've got number 5 Duke versus number 4 Tennessee. Folks, let me tell you, big game. I have Duke going all the way in one of my pools, my primary pool. And this brings me to a good point. I don't know how people feel out there, but you know, when you fill out a bracket, it used to be whatever bracket you filled out, you had to live and die by it. Now we see people that can submit, you know, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 brackets. It really kind of waters it down a little bit. So I tried something different this year. I normally just do one bracket, and if I fill them out in other different pools, I use the same picks. Well, this year I decided to take one bracket and do all the picks in the first 2 rounds, and then do the exact opposite on another bracket. So my first bracket, which I'm in my buddy Matt Johnson's pool, I'm in last place. I only picked 7 of the first 16 games correctly. That means I missed 9. Last place. I'm still in last place, but I had a little bit better second day. I was 11-5, 11 picks that worked. So I end up with 22 overall, with 22 out of 32, missing 10. Or I should say 18. I was 18 for 32. I missed 14 in my primary bracket. Now my secondary bracket, I did a little better. I was 12 out of 16 the first day. Ended up finishing 22, so I made 10. I was 10, missed 6 the second day. So 22 out of 32 possible points. And that, again, like I said, is just the opposite of every single thing I did in the first bracket. But I don't know how you guys feel about this, but, you know, if you fill out so many different brackets and you change all these teams, how do you really know who you're rooting for? You know, it comes down to the end, I guess, and you're just looking at which bracket has the most points and which one you have a chance to win. I don't agree with that. I think you should fill out one bracket, and yet that bracket should be your picks throughout all your different pools, and you shouldn't be allowed to change the different ones. But that's just me. I'm old school. All right. So our 3:15 game is number 8 Arkansas versus number 1 KU. 4:10 game is Princeton, number 15 versus number 7 Mizzou. And again, if Patrick was here, we'd be doing all the betting odds and everything else. Look for that next week. So we'll be there doing all that and getting all your picks and stuff like that and your odds with Patrick. 5:10 is number 9 Auburn versus number 1 Houston. Houston ended up having their best player sit out a little bit towards the end in their first game. That's why the game got close. So watch for that to see if Auburn can capitalize and knock off another number 1. At 5:45, we have Penn State, number 10, versus number 2, Texas. This one should be a really interesting game. Penn State is playing extremely well. They came out and just dominated their first game. And Texas is always tough at the number 2 seed. So keep your eyes on that one. That's at 5:45 Mountain Standard Time today. Again, add 2 hours to each of these times if you're on the East Coast. Number 7 Northwestern versus number 2 UCLA. UCLA, again, has had some injuries. They're not at full strength, so that game could be in question. And then lastly, at 7:40 or 9:40 Eastern Time, you've got number 8 Maryland versus number 1 Alabama. Will Alabama be able to make it to the Sweet 16 and be moving on? And again, tomorrow, the exact same thing is going to be happening. You'll have 8 more games that will be spread out kind of nicely so that you can watch each and every game. There'll be some overlap, but it should be a lot easier to watch these last 2 days. All right, let's see what we've got next coming up here. Again, I want to bring to your attention that tomorrow is Selection Sunday for the Frozen 4 tournament. So be watching that. And if you want to go in and find out what's going on, because you're not going to find it being covered on any of the sports shows or ESPN or anything else, because basketball is just going to completely dominate, go into ushco.com, and you can go in and you'll be able to look at the pairwise rankings. You'll be able to see what the selection committee decides for college hockey and who's in and who is out. I'll be checking that first thing tomorrow morning. All right, so let's get into our women's portion. And I'm going to refer to an article that I pulled from the Denver Post. And it is talking about Becky Hammon. And she was in town for a talk with History of Colorado. History of Colorado was sponsoring Bold Women Change History get-together with a lot of women athletes here in the Mountain West region and the mountain, just the Front Range of Colorado. A lot of women came to this. It's funny, when she was there, a young girl asked a question, and this is just kind of gives you a little bit of insight of Becky Hammon. And again, we talked a little bit at the beginning of the show about who Becky Hammon is. Everybody knows that she's the current coach of the Las Vegas Aces. They are the defending champion of the WNBA. In her first season, Kelsey Plum is one of her players. Candace Parker is now rumored to be coming on board with the Las Vegas Aces. So they should be really favored to try to repeat for the WNBA championship. But anyways, I'll read this from the article. It says, she even took time to offer advice to a young female basketball player who wanted to know how to handle an aggressive defense. So what did Becky say? She goes, "Oh, Annie," the little girl's name was Annie, "you don't want my answer on this one." Then she told the child, "When teams get really physical, you might have to get physical back. You can always outsmart people. If they're trying to beat you up a little bit physically, plan ahead a little earlier in your movements and how you can try to be effective against the team. But sometimes you just have to pop them back." So, interesting piece of information from Becky Hammon to a young fan, telling her to toughen up and to try to outthink her opponents. But you know what? Basically, sometimes you just have to give them some physicality back in a non-flagrant way, in order to send a message and tell them, hey, you're not going to be able to push me around or hold me or whatever like that. I mean, I know when I played, if someone started trying to hang on to me, I was constantly knocking their hand down and telling them, nope, you're not going to touch me, don't hang on me, get off me. Just some little hints to say I'm not going to be physically manhandled by you, on offense or on defense. All right, let's see some other things that she talked about, which I thought was pretty interesting. They talk about the highlights, but I've got a lot of lowlights in there too. And those are the moments that I tell people that while they don't make me exceptional, because a lot of people have low moments, it's what do you do with those moments, how you handle those failures. I just try to let those things build in me. I'm very stubborn. It helped with resiliency, toughness, and things that can help you, not only in basketball, but in life in general. So she was giving out some just incredible, just great snippets of information, things that had helped her succeed. Remember, she was just a small town girl from South Dakota. Nobody really knew who she was when she ended up showing up and playing for CSU back in 1994-95. She was at CU from 95 to 99, and then she wasn't drafted. So she packed her bags, showed up with the New York Liberty, and basically packed her bags for the entire summer, assuming that she was going to make the team. Not only did she make the team, but she ended up being an all-star and then playing on 2 Olympic teams. So that just shows you when you're faced with adversity, you double down with resiliency and tenacity, and you move forward. And I think that's a great message that Becky was giving to some of these young women. There was some other things that she talked about, maybe a choice of hers coming out of high school. Back then, the best two programs in college basketball was University of Tennessee with Pat Summitt and Gino Auriemma at UConn. Well, she says that, you know what, you try to do the best with what you're given, and whatever happens, happens. I'm only responsible for me waking up every morning and doing my best. And that's the truth. And we should all take that to heart, because it's the truth. No matter what you do, you can only be responsible for how you react to your situations, your adversity, and what happens every single day. She goes on and she talks a little bit about what happened at CU, and she said, I'll tell you one thing I loved about Colorado State and going to school there. My best friend that I met at 17 is still my best friend. So I can only assume that maybe that would be her roommate or maybe one of her teammates. And again, she goes here, I'm not picking Tennessee, I'm not picking UConn, I'm going to Colorado State because that's how my journey was supposed to go. Not being drafted, all this hard stuff that has happened to me, the no's that have happened to me only built toughness and resilience in me. So, good job, Becky, and we wish you best of luck going forward this year with the Las Vegas Aces. We'll be watching you. Well, my favorite player, of course, is Kelsey Plum in the WNBA, and I'll be watching her really closely because she plays for Becky Hammon in the Las Vegas Aces. All right. Well, folks, again, we are here at the Shops in Northfield and the Brothers Bar and Grill. Come on down and join us. I won't be sticking around that long today. Patrick's out of town. I'm going to go take my wife out, and we're going to celebrate St. Patrick's Day today. Kind of bounce around a little bit, probably end up at this little Irish bar over in Wheat Ridge called Clancy's. They've got 2 or 3 bands playing at a time, and I want to get some corned beef and cabbage and some other good Irish food. Of course, drink some green beer today. Got my green on today for St. Patrick's Day. Folks, I want to thank you for tuning in. I want to thank the LinkedIn crowd for watching and for sharing us and all the comments they make. Again, my friend Scott Howard and Forever Green Farms out of Ithaca, New York. Now that Cornell has lost and they may not make the tournament, he will be going full board, digging trees. Again, these are evergreen trees that you can get and shipped anywhere in the country. Sizes anywhere from 8-footers all the way up to 35-footers. And he digs them at the right time. He has the equipment, and he has the trucks that he can put them on and get them sent out to you. So feel free to reach out to him at 607-227-3500. Scotty Howard, Forever Green Farms. I want to thank you very much again, folks, for tuning in. We will be back next week with Patrick. We'll get a bunch of the bets that are going on. We'll be really in the meat of the March Madness. We'll also be talking about the first round of the Frozen Four tournament. Again, only 16 teams make that tournament, so it ends up going a heck of a lot faster than the NCAA tournament. Again, as I always say, get out there, get your side hustle on, and earn it. Thanks again, folks, for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Patrick will be back. He's chomping at the bit to get back on. I can't wait to see you next week. In the meantime, have a great week out there. Enjoy. Love your family. Hug your kids. And pet your animals. Feed them well. Thank you. Bye-bye.